I'm Jamie and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about episode 7 of Taskmaster Series 17, and again this was a pretty strong episode in my opinion. We started off with the prize task as usual, and this was the snazziest hollow thing, which I do think is a pretty decent category this far into Taskmaster. A lot of the times we do see them go a bit out there, but I think this one allowed enough creativity from each contestant and it wasn't restrictive either. So yeah, there were lots of different ways they could have gone with this and I thought everybody did a pretty decent job. Joanne, I did like hers going for the very literal, as she called it, basic bitch idea, and this was just a very snazzy boot full of chips. I'm not sure why she filled it with chips, but fair, I don't know, they're neither snazzy or anything, I don't understand that part of it. But it looked pretty cool, the boot was snazzy and it was hollow. I guess putting the chips in was just to show that it was hollow. And yeah, as I said, I think this was a pretty decent attempt at the prize task. John's this time was a bedazzled egg, or a Fabergé egg, I think was what it was called. And I really quite liked it, I thought it looked quite cool. Greg didn't really agree, which I do understand. It is a very odd item, but I do think it fits Taskmaster very well, like a bedazzled egg. That's a very Taskmaster thing in my opinion. But yeah, I thought it was funny and I thought it was pretty effective, and especially the way he talked about the price of it and the value and everything like that was quite good. I also loved the addition of the mini task inside, telling them to be the snazziest as possible, and I thought that was a really good addition to it, and I think it wasn't really taken into account in the scoring because personally that really elevated this to the next level, there being a second part to this prize. And yeah, so personally, this was one of my favourite ones. Nick's I did really like as well. This was the soundtrack to Sleepy Hollow, and I thought it was a decent prize task, not my favourite one, but what really elevated this one was him singing into Greg's ear. I thought just him humming it in the first place was funny, but going so close to Greg and him being a bit nervous about whether or not it was something that he, was whether it was a joke or whether Greg actually wanted him to do it. I just thought it was very, very funny and a great way to start the episode. Sophie, I thought, did a really good job with this one. She went simple, effective, and was a shell, or conch as she called it, just covered with glitter. And I thought it was a very good idea. I think those type of shells are always, people quite like them because of the noises they make. And I think adding glitter on it really just took this to the next level. I personally don't know if it was my favourite and deserved the whole 5 points, but I did really enjoy it. Steve's one, again, it was fantastic. He is nailing the prize tasks. He is consistently being one of the best at these ones. And this was, again, lots of little parts to it. As he described, it was a hollow promise to come to a snazzy party. Very, very elaborate, and I love it when contestants trick Greg into being involved in a task unknowingly, and yeah, I just thought he pulled it off really well. Lots of parts to it. I thought getting him to record the video message was really, really good, and of course the anagram of prize task at the end. This to me screamed how deep does this go, Wokoma, that we had from the previous season. It was very much like that, where everything just added on to each other, and it was just really, really good. And personally, I probably would have given this 5 points because I just thought, like I said, very elaborate, lots of dedication to it. But I always fear when you do trick Greg, you're never going to get 5 points because he doesn't like being tricked. So it's always a risky one. And I think he did come out quite well with 4 points. Thinking back to Mark Watson's high octane prize where he came last because he didn't like his trousers being stolen. So it can be risky, but I thought this was a fantastic attempt at the task. And as I said, overall, very, very good prize tasks. I'm very impressed with the prize tasks this season. I thought everybody's been quite good. Now, on to the first task of this episode, which was to work out what you had caught on the fishing line. This one I did really enjoy. I thought it was quite a fun task. I liked the concept of it, and then there was lots of things that made it additionally tricky or just more funny as well. So the actual task of being having to follow a fishing line to find out what you caught at the end was very good. It must have taken ages to set up, the amount of wire that they used and all the little tricks that they seem to have that not everybody looked at as well. And all the little, as I said, red herrings everywhere was really good. It kind of reminded me of the red herring task in Taskmaster New Zealand at Series 4, just with the way that it was kind of set up with being the most obvious answer was the answer. And I thought that was really fun, but it was obviously such a different task to that one, so I wouldn't really say I would say it's been inspired by, definitely, but not a copy or anything like that, because it's so different. I love how they got the crew involved to put the fish thing on their backs. This is something I haven't really done before. I really like the addition of this. I hope that it's something that they perhaps use in the future. I don't think it'd be a regular thing because then people would get suspicious of the crew all the time. But I thought the addition of going to fix the sound and pinning something on the back was very, very good. As for the actual attempts of the task, I feel like everybody was quite similar in the attempts. I don't think there's much room for creativity with this one. It's just like how fast you can do it and if you get lucky going on to one bit or not, like, you know, things like that. With Steve, I think he did get a bit unlucky with some parts kind of broke apart and that kind of left him a bit stumped, and unfortunately it meant that he was the only one to not find out that he had caught a fish, which was a shame, but it did feel like he was there for ages. Joanne as well was doing it for a while and unfortunately did get it like quite early on, but just didn't give it as her official answer. This is now the second time this has happened with Joanne. I can't remember what the other task was, but she gave a good answer at the start and then just didn't officially give her answer until it was Mr. Blobby, of course. She gave that answer quite early on but didn't give it as like an official answer, and Alex on both times didn't accept it until she like firmly said it's this, like this is my final answer. I feel John and Sophie got more involved in the rest of the task, like all the other little things that they had. I think John found the one box that had something in, and you know, they actually found the actual fish, whereas Joanne didn't. So I liked that there was some variety in the attempts. I loved Sophie looking into Alex's eyes to see whether he was lying. I thought that was a fun way to try and work out what it was, and it did work in her favour as well, where she managed to find out that he, you know, which ones weren't the right answer, which I thought was quite good. I liked her describing Alex's eyes as naturally very demonic. I thought that was quite funny. But obviously the highlight of this task was Nick, who just absolutely stormed through it all and got it so quickly. It was just incredible. I thought he did such a good job. He just went and he just did the task and just... It reminds me of like Kerry Golding and Bosch. She just got it done and she didn't think about it. She just went and did what she was supposed to do. And it was just very, very fun, especially as it was Nick, who has consistently been at the bottom of the scoring, to just go and smash this one out was just absolutely incredible. And I think he was too quick for the soundy to come and pin the fish on his back, because he was just so quick and just got it done. Overall, I thought this was a very fun task, some kind of tricky elements to it, but overall quite doable, and I imagine quite frustrating for, you know, Sophie and Steve particularly as well, because Sophie was there for like half an hour doing it. But yeah, it can be quite frustrating. But yeah, as I said, I did really enjoy this one. The next task was to perform a piece of recognisable music without an instrument, and I can say that this is one that I would have failed tragically at if it was my attempt, because I thought this one was very, very difficult. They had to be really, really creative with how they create the music, and I thought that the general ideas that they had, whereas it was like, you know, blowing into the bottles to create music, creating a little harp and just using things as drums, were all good attempts at it, and I think just showed the way that you can really like elevate it. I thought Sophie's was a really good one for just like drumming and things, and then elevated to, I would say, John's creation of the harp, which was just incredible, and then Nick's amazing rendition on the glass things. And I just thought it was a really, really good attempt from pretty much everybody, because it was just such a difficult task in my opinion. I thought this was really, really tough. I have no idea what I would have done. Probably just gone something like Sophie's, like creating drum things, but I just would have struggled. And to me, this task as a viewer was quite difficult to work out which ones were recognisable, because I didn't really know much of the music, but you could obviously tell which ones were the good ones and which ones weren't. We started off with John and Sophie being paired together, and I thought these were both decent attempts, as I mentioned before. John's was very, very good. His one particularly I thought was amazing to start off with. As I said, I wasn't really familiar with the actual tune, but you could tell that there was method behind it. You could tell he was creating a tune, and I thought the actual creation of the harp must have taken ages. Like, it was so... I thought he did such a good job, like almost like meticulous with the way that it was organised, and he said he kind of tuned it next to a guitar to make sure that it was at least sounding similar, and I thought this was a really, really good attempt. Same with Sophie's, very chaotic, very good. I thought that at the start especially, you definitely got that sense of, okay, yes, she is doing it to a tune, but then she just went off the rails, and kind of, I think this kind of led to her downfall a bit in this task, where if she just kind of stopped where the music, she kind of followed on the music a bit more instead of just going mad with it, she perhaps might have climbed up in the points a bit more. But as I said, I thought this was really, really good and a lot better than what I would have done. Again, feeling bad for Steve in this task. I thought he was so ambitious with this. I thought there was a really good idea behind it. The actual using the glass bottles and things is, as I said, was one of the first things I thought of. But this was absolutely hilarious. They couldn't work out what the tune he was following. I just thought that added to this task, made it extra funny, because I think in reality this is what most people's attempts would be like. Personally, I did think Greensleeves did fit it better. But I still think he was still 1 point territory, 100%. But yeah, I do think Greensleeves was the better tune to pair it with. And I do think playing the music behind the attempts really did emphasise how good or how bad the attempts were. Like for John's, it emphasised to me that it's like, right, okay, he has done a very, very good job. And with Steve's, it was like, okay, yeah, this is as bad as it sounds. It doesn't really match the music, especially like even with the Greensleeves or the other one, it really did just emphasise how accurate they were. So I thought that was a really, really good idea. Joanne's one, I thought was an excellent idea that perhaps just wasn't executed very, very well. The interpretive dance bit I didn't think was the best idea, but I guess that's kind of where the performance part came from it, because the charades was more just the recognisable bit. And again, she picked something that wasn't perhaps the best thing to do charades by, because it didn't, the sounds like, she had to do sounds like for everything, and it didn't really sound exactly, beer didn't really sound like what she was meaning it to be. But I thought the idea of using charades was very, very strong, because the point was to have it recognisable. And so I definitely think if she'd chosen a better piece of music, or at least one that was easier words to spell out using charades, then she would have been up there with the higher points. But I do think, to be fair to her, 3 points is a very, very good scoring for what she did. But again, this is Nick's episode. His was just absolutely incredible. It was just perfect. He kept it short, simple. He got a very, very recognisable piece of music and he just pulled it off perfectly. Like, he just mastered it. It was so good. I liked the kind of conductor at the start and the end. Just added to the performance point of it. And yeah, just incredible. I was almost had goosebumps when I was watching it, because it was just this is so much better than I ever thought any of them could ever do. But yeah, this task was so good. Not only was it funny with the kind of bad attempts, but it was also so impressive with the good attempts, and one that really did surprise me. And yeah, I just thought it was a very well constructed task and very difficult as well. So the good attempts were particularly impressive. So the next task started off with them having to choose 3 things: a favourite body part, kitchen utensil and gardening tool. And I'm so glad that Greg pointed it out, that the fact that they didn't even think about what they might use these items for. I just can't believe some of the, particularly body parts that they chose. Why would you choose, unless they thought they might be choosing it for somebody else and was making it a bit more difficult. But I think you would assume that you'd have to use those items in some way. I don't think the gardening tools or kitchen utensils they could have really done too much guesswork with, because you don't know what the task is. But at least choose a sensible body part that's not your ear or your little toe or anything. I think John's was the most sensible with forearm, but even then you could have said hand or even feet, which would have been horrible to have to actually use in the task, but at least you could have at least trod on all the oranges or something like that. But yeah, I was just so shocked that none of them stopped to think about why they were selecting items. And as I said, glad Greg pointed it out, because this isn't the first time this has happened this season. But saying that, it did make it funnier that they chose very impractical items. Sophie chanting Booba Alex was hilarious. And yeah, I thought that it did lead to some funny moments. So in a way, I'm glad they did choose bad items, but it's just, I just can't believe none of them stopped to think about why they might need those items. The actual task was to juice the oranges, and they could only touch the oranges with the objects that they chose. And this again is a task that's been taken from another version, but has been mixed up to make it more different. So this task originated from the Taskmaster Australia, from their first season, and it is different. So in the Australian version, they had to juice a whole pint of orange juice, but they had a whole selection of items that they could use on the table. Again, with the caveat being that they couldn't touch the oranges with their hands. It had to be only with the items on the table. This, I think, made it trickier, in my opinion, because even though you didn't have to juice a whole pint and it was just like how much you could juice, I thought having only like 2 items to use did make it more difficult. Again, this is my feeling sorry for Steve episode. Grating the oranges like and his armpit and nipple on the thing, just it looked so bad. It looked so painful. I did think the armpit wasn't a bad one because, you know, it is like something that you can use to like hold something in, but it didn't really work in his favour at all. I do think that maybe he could have used the grater in a different way and just used it to kind of try and chop the oranges open. But yeah, the grating was absolutely brutal. That just looked awful. Nick, I feel like, did have a good system. He wasn't really using the things as intended, like using the pole of the rake, was it, that he had to smush the oranges into the vase. I thought that was a good idea. Again, just kind of using just brute force just to get the oranges open was the most difficult part. Like once you got that part done, you could then kind of juice it a bit more. I thought he used the grater very well. So all in all, a very good attempt from Nick. And I loved the way he broke the glass. That was just really funny, and he had to go on to using the table. I feel like he would have done a lot better if he hadn't broken the glass. Like he had a really, really good system going at that point. With Joanne and Sophie, I think they both had decent attempts as well. And I do agree with them that I think the spatula that they were given did disadvantage them a lot. Because when I think spatula, I don't think of one like that. I think it was quite unfair to give them that. I don't know why they went for that option. Maybe it was just whatever they had in the kitchen. But yeah, I do think they should have given them a better one, like a metal one or something like that. Sophie picked shears, and I don't think she used them to their full potential. Again, as I said, once you like got the oranges open, like that kind of set you up for the task. Like she could have just tried to slice all the oranges open and then, or even just used the shears to squeeze them a bit more. I think she definitely could have used that more in her attempt at the task. Even though she didn't do bad in the task, I just think, yeah, she could have really elevated her attempt at the task here. Because John did very, very well, as usual, when it comes to the tasks. I thought he utilised all of his items quite well, using his forearms to like smack the oranges. It just looked painful, but he did a good job with his other items. I thought him juicing the oranges into the pan was a good idea to start off with, because it was just a bigger surface so that you could limit the amount of orange juice that you got on the table. Obviously, he did mess himself up with thinking he could only touch the wok with his forearms. It was just really funny, but I'm glad he successfully put the orange juice into the glass. I did think at one point he might get it mixed up and just juice the oranges into the pan and then not put it into the glass, but I'm glad he remembered to do that at the end. But yeah, I thought this was a good task. I think it changed a task from an international version and turned it into their own thing, made it different enough to be distinct, but also carrying the same things that worked with the Australian version of this task, and bringing it into this one with their own unique changes. And then finally on to the studio task, which was to paint a face onto the ball that was dangling in front of them. And this was quite fun. It was challenging enough, and I do think some of the attempts were just atrociously bad. I thought everybody's would have a decent attempt at this. Like, it was difficult, but I do think some of them just went a bit too far with some of the things that they were trying to do. I thought simple was the best way to go with this, and I think that paid off when you see who won. Nick dropping the ball was hilarious. I don't think any of them expected that to happen, but it was really fun the way Alex was clambering about trying to get the ball back. And one thing that I liked about this task was the way that they presented all the faces at the end, whereas they did it like anonymously so that people didn't know, so that Greg didn't know whose was whose. Not that he really has a bias, but I think it was just quite fun, the reveal of whose was whose at the end. And I definitely agree with the way he scored. I think maybe 2 of the bad ones at the beginning could have been swapped around for me, but I think the person who won and the person who came second was correct. I thought those 2 really stood out from the rest, particularly the one who came first, which was Sophie. And yeah, I thought it was a good task. I think it was quite fun to watch. Sophie was swearing loads at the ball. I thought Nick getting confused about like when he was looking at the ball, obviously dropping it as well. I thought everybody just was quite fun. Throwing the hair, trying to land onto the ball was just really good. So I liked that, and I liked this idea of Greg looking at them as like who he would date. I just thought it was a very fun task and a great way to end the episode. And finally, Nick has won an episode. So everybody's won an episode apart from Sophie. I hope she does win one eventually. I like it when they do. I know some people think that they do engineer the episodes to have it so that somebody wins, like the underdog finally gets to win an episode. Which, I mean, whatever, you could think that, but I think it never always works out that way. Like Greg could go off the rails and score things completely differently. Like there's no way of really guaranteeing somebody wins. But even if they are doing that, I don't mind, because I do like having the underdog win an episode. So I was very happy when Nick won this one. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, then please leave a like, it really helps the channel, and comment down below your thoughts on this episode. Which one was your favourite task? To me personally, there were lots of great tasks in this episode. I thought everyone was really strong. And if you want to see more videos too of Taskmaster, please subscribe and I'll have some more out for you soon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!